Let's loudly chant Hari Bol 3 times for him. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Dharamsetu Prabhu was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1974 when he was 16 years old. He was in high school and he got these books, Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure, and he got attracted to it. And at 16 years, he took first initiation in 1974 and second initiation in 1976. And then he moved to San Diego in 1977, and he's there since that time. He also was teaching in Mississippi, and also in San Diego. We had a kids school there in San Diego for many years. There were certified California teachers who were teaching. So all the Vaishnava philosophy was taught there. So Prabhuji is still very actively worshipping the deities, Shri Radha Giridhari in San Diego, Shaligram Shila, Govardhan Shila. And he does a lot of pujas and gives Srimad Bhagavatam classes and serves the Srila Prabhupada's movement. So very inspiring. When we were there, it was very inspiring to see Prabhuji was so active since 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, he would come do service for the deities and give Bhagavatam class in the evening. And every festival he would very enthusiastically inspire everybody. So we are very, very happy. And just like all Prabhupada disciples, like we have His Holiness Harivilas Maharaj, and you know, all are so exemplary. So let us take inspiration. And the only way we can take inspiration is by accepting what they are sharing with us. So let us, with our open heart, accept the wonderful topic of 4 essential qualities to be successful in life. Hare Krishna.
There we go. I think that's going to work. You know, when you go on Amazon, you want to look something up, and the very first thing you say, it says, sponsored. Not what you're looking for, but they paid for that to get up there. Then you scroll down to find what you're actually looking for. So I paid Gaur Keshav a lot of money to say all those nice things about me, so I just want you to know I'm sponsored. So it may or may not be as good as you wanted, but I paid for that sponsorship for him to introduce me so nicely. So Jai Radha Madhava. Okay. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I've been thinking about coming to this temple for quite some time. Because I've been to Seattle a few times, but it's always for weddings, and it's always down in the city or something like that. So thank you, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So I'm glad I finally was able to be here for association and service. Radhe, Radhe. Your mission in life. Longer straps on the cartels, okay? Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Ballabha Girivardhari Jasura Nandana Braja Janna Ranjana Jasura Nandana Braja Janna Ranjana Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki, Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki, Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajika Jaja Shuddha Shri Shri Mahad His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Bhubari ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajika Jaja Shuddha Shri Shri Mahad His Divine Grace. Shri Bhakti Shranta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Bhubari ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories, C Guru and Sri Gauranga. Mam Vishnu Varaya Krishna Staya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Vasyatya Shatarane. Hare Krishna. So, the first time I gave this talk was 2 years ago. There's a devotee preaching facility called Find Your Home in Om. If you go to Glasgow, Scotland, devotees have downtown, they have this second floor, and every week they have these programs there, right there. It's for the congregation and different people. And devotees play musical instruments, nice kirtan and so on, and talk, and then prasadam. So they asked me to speak, and I spoke on this. This was the topic I chose. And it's a topic or a verse. It says 4 qualities. Now, when we get into it, you're going to recognize what we're talking about, because it's a verse we recite pretty much every day in our Krishna consciousness. And if you think about it, there are so many verses, and these verses is wisdom. wisdom. I mean, it's an interesting thing. People aren't really looking so much for wisdom these days, right? At most, they want some good advice, right? But some deep wisdom. So the Vedas are filled with thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of verses. But this particular one is very, very special. In fact, the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj, and he's not an ordinary devotee. He was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to present the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the most authoritative biography on Lord Chaitanya. Because the Chaitanya Bhagavat, of course, Vrindavan Das Thakur is known as the Veda Vyas of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and just so many beautiful, detailed pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. But what's different about the Chaitanya Charitamrita, along with those pastimes, is the whole Siddhanta and philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. It's not only in Bengali, there's so much Sanskrit there, and quoting so many verses substantiating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not only as the Yuga avatar, but the process given, the chanting of Hare Krishna, the Sankirtan Yajna. And so, most qualified person. And he chose one verse, and he said, this verse is so important. He said, you should wear it like a garland. Like a garland. To remind you. So, someone gives you a, just like, I don't know if they still do it, but decades ago they used to give this saying about, you tie a little string on your finger to remind you of something. Now you just ask Alexa, right? Can you, right? That was happening today. We're sitting there and all of a sudden, don't forget the Sundartik. Don't forget the Sundartik. It was at his house. She was saying, so right? So times have changed, but they used to tie a little string on things. Oh, tie a string on your finger and remember something. But a garland. So that garland means you wear, just like I'm wearing this garland. Okay? So to remember this verse all the time. And of course, a garland is more than just a little string on your finger. It's a very beautiful, fragrant reminder. And you could say it's a reflection of what that verse is. It's very, very important, very, very beautiful, and should never be forgotten. And just like a wedding, right? When you got married, you gave each other garlands, right? And then you chose each other as lifelong partners. So you're wearing that garland, don't forget, right? Don't forget. So what is the verse? It's the Trinadapi Sunichena Todoriva Suhishtana Manida Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. So in this verse, what it's so important, the one pastime of Srila Prabhupada, you've heard this I'm sure before, is I think it was Dr. Kapoor, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, when Prabhupada was practicing as a pharmacist in maybe Ahmedabad or Allahabad, I forget where his pharmacy was. I think it may be Allahabad, right? Allahabad, yeah. They were sitting there, and he said, you're a pharmacist. By Babu, you're a pharmacist. Do you know the formula for how to get love of Godhead? Prabhupada said, yes, I know the formula. But he said, mixing is not so easy. It's not so easy to mix. So, and that's Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said it's very, very simple, but the application is a little bit difficult. And we'll get into that. But anyways, the success in Krishna, this will come out. Our success in Krishna consciousness is dependent upon how much of these four qualities we can manifest or actually bring out in our life, because these four things, these four qualities are actually the qualities of the soul. To be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. Now you think about that. In the material world, there's a little reflection of that, but the depth of what's being described here is actually almost inconceivable to our mind. To be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. If someone has just a little bit of these qualities, they're such a nice person, such a wonderful person. Excuse me. And to the extent we don't have these qualities, we should be avoided. Should be avoided. Sometimes I use this example that there are two kinds of people in this world. There are those kinds of people, because everyone has an energy. Everyone has energy. You pick up on it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just pick up on people's energy. There's two kinds of people in this world. There are those kinds of people you're really happy when they show up. Oh, you're so happy to see them. And the other kinds of people are the ones that you're really happy when they leave, right? Those kinds of people in the world. So even someone has a little bit of these qualities, it's so very, very attractive, very, very attractive. But this more humble than a blade of grass, that's asking quite a lot. And sometimes we say, oh, someone's very, very humble person. But these qualities have to be referring to something on the spiritual platform. That's the point I'm trying to make. We're really talking about the spiritual platform, because you can't. Why is that example of straw on the street? It's actually not just grass that's growing. You know that? It's not that, because grass that's growing, they say if you step on it, it bounces back, right? So, but it's absolute humility that straw on the street, you step on it, it doesn't do anything, doesn't protest, it just like that. It's so humble. And of course, then someone will say, wait a second. Do you want me to be so humble that people can walk all over me? Right? Is that what's being said? That's not what's being said at all. Sometimes the understanding is that someone's very, very humble, maybe they're being taken advantage of, or they have some, self-image has been damaged or something like that. But the saying is, the difference between real humility is that you think of yourself less. You think of yourself, what is that? Yeah, you think of yourself less, and then the other one is you think less of yourself. See the difference? The low self-esteem, right? There's a self-esteem movement, So low self-esteem means you think less of yourself. We're not saying that. Actually, Krishna consciousness means you think the most of yourself. In fact, if we don't think of ourselves as spirit souls, Jivera Subhoy Krishna Nichadas, then we're in that second category. We're thinking less of ourselves, like that. We're identifying with a temporary material body and all of the whole package, like that. And it's actually an embarrassment. Have you ever been embarrassed? Right? Everyone's been embarrassed. It's like, oh. So we should actually be embarrassed that we're in the material world. It's an embarrassment for the soul. But if we're thinking, no, I actually think they're quite wonderful here. It's fantastic. We got a problem. So we have a problem. So this humility means it's on the spiritual platform. And it has to be based upon our detachment from matter. It's based on spiritual advancement. That one's more humble than a blade of grass. And, the opposite of humility is pride. One's proud, one's arrogant, one's conceited and vain. Conceit and vain is when pride goes a little bit too far. And so being humble is really a recognition. In fact, all these qualities will be brought up. It's a recognition of who we really are. The question could be brought up, what do we have to be proud of? What do we have proud of? Now, that's a spiritual question. That's a spiritual question because we really don't have anything. Stop and think about it. We really don't have anything because if you had it, if it was yours, why can it be taken away from you? Everything we have will be taken away from us. And that's a difficult reality. But think about it. Every single thing we have will be taken away from us. It's not ours. It's given to us at a certain time. It's going to be taken away from us. So why are we so proud? Why are we so proud of all these different things? In due course of time, they're all taken away. And what's left? Just us, the spirit soul, the spirit soul. So in that identity, one is very, very, very humble. Very, very humble. That's just the nature. In fact, it said one of the most difficult things in spiritual life is to realize that we are insignificant, infinitesimal spirit soul, and that Krishna has unlimited servants. Like that. Because even in devotional service, we're quite proud. Or we have a sense of identity. Oh yeah, I'm the head pujari, I'm this pujari, I'm this, I'm that, I do all these different things. But how about if there were 1 million pujaris here? How would you feel? There are 1 million cooks, or 1 million this and 1 million that, or a billion. And that's what there is. It's actually unlimited servants of the Lord. So our position is actually, we're very insignificant in relation to Krishna. But Krishna finds us very significant. That's the point. We're not lost in that great number of servants. Every single jiva is so dear to Krishna. So, but one is very, very humble, understanding their position. And Lord Chaitanya, he quoted the famous verse about that I am not a sannyasi, I'm not a grihasta, I'm not a vanaprast, I'm not a brahmachari, I'm not a sudra, vaishya, like that, kshatriya, Brahmin. I'm none of those. I'm just eternal servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord of the gopis. So that's our identity. If we can find happiness in that, then we're actually very, very humble. And it's actually quite a relief, because if we're not humble, we start judging other people. Then we get into problems. So that will come up also as we go through this. So the next one given is the tree, right? More tolerant than a tree. And the example is given that a tree, two things, a tree exists simply for the service to others. That's all it does, simply for the service to others. And even there may be so many offenses against the tree, right? You take the fruit, you take the wood, you do this. The tree doesn't complain. It doesn't complain, just like that. And it's not just, it's rendering service. In fact, they say to be very careful when you cut down a tree, because a tree is actually a whole community. A tree is a whole community. So many birds live in the tree, and different insects and so on. And when you cut down a tree, you actually remove a whole community, because it's rendering so much service. A simple thing as shade and fruit and this and that. And like when I first arrived here, the devotee who gave me a ride from the airport said, or maybe you said last night, did you know the air quality here in Seattle is really good because they have so many trees, right? Right? Because it's always the exchange of the carbon dioxide and this and that and so on. So the tree is there. We have to be more tolerant than a tree. And Prabhupada said, and it has been said by many people, that you test a person, the real test of our personality is our ability to tolerate difficult situations or circumstances in life. That's where the real test comes. It's easy to just glide along if nothing goes wrong, but when some difficulties happen, that's the real test of a person, how we react. And it's interesting because sometimes it's said that what's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people? Because the same thing happens to everyone, so what is the difference? What makes a person successful and a person unsuccessful in life? It's right in that moment, how they react. It's how we react to all the things that happen to us. And that's make us successful or unsuccessful. Successful people know how to respond to everything that's going on in life properly, and they actually move forward. So this tolerance, there are so many difficulties in life, and we know that there are three sources of difficulties: our own mind and body, natural disturbances, excessive heat or cold. Now, I'm from Southern California, and I'm biased about the Northwest. But I would say it would be difficult for me to live here because most of the year it's not like this. Like that. In fact, my mother tells a story that my mother's still alive, but my mother and father, for many years, they live in western Massachusetts, so very cold, they're elderly. They would always go to Florida and spend the winter in Florida. Sometimes just in a campground or just different things. They just stay there. And she said one time she was at the laundromat doing her laundry, and this woman was there doing her laundry. Nice tan, very nice tan. Wow, that's one of those people who like really get tanned, you know. And they struck up a conversation, and my mother said, "Where are you from?" She said, "I'm from Seattle." I said, "Seattle?" I said, "You're so nicely tanned. What's that all about?" She says, "Oh, no, this isn't a tan. This is rust." That's what she said. I mean, it's rust. So anyways, there's natural disturbances, heat, cold, rain, excessive heat, whatever. And then also other people. Did you know there's a calculation that 80%, that's a lot, 80% of our happiness in life comes from other people, and 80% of our distress in life come from people, other people in our lives. That's where 80% of all our problems will come from. Ask any parent who has kids, right? Sometimes, at a certain age, sometimes, but that's a burden of love. But it's interesting. But we all have to, now what are you going to do? You have to tolerate these things. You have to tolerate them. And that's what gives a person character, their ability to tolerate what's going on. But it's not what's it called, stoicism, that you just tolerate for just tolerating, like a stone or something inert. We're tolerating because we have a goal in life, and we have to keep going forward, and these things are distractions, and we have to sometimes just tolerate and keep going. And I mean, there's so many different examples of that. Materially and spiritually, if people have achieved great success in life, they're very, very tolerant and just moving. Just like the whole story, last night we heard the whole story about comes and solves the whole problem. They thought they couldn't do it anymore, about changing the floor. All these different things, and just tolerating, going forward. Whatever distresses Krishna sends, that's the big thing. For a devotee, they see that happiness or distress are both sent by Krishna, and for Krishna, it's the same. We react differently, but for Krishna, maybe this devotee needs some so-called happiness, maybe they need some distress for their advancement in Krishna consciousness. So devotees usually not disturbed even in difficult times because they see this is a gift from Krishna. Everything's a gift from Krishna. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, isn't it? It's like, what is going on? They say that the number one question every single clergy person receives, doesn't matter whether you're a pundit or a rabbi or a priest or a minister or imam, whatever you are, the number one question people ask them, and it gets asked a lot. You know what the number one question is? Can you guess? Yeah, why am I suffering? Yeah, that's it. Why am I suffering? That's the number one question every clergy person gets. Why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? Why me? So it's just the nature of this material world. But the devotee feels, I'm suffering because Krishna really wants to help me in my Krishna consciousness. There's one devotee, he called me the other night, and he's elderly, he's not doing very well. But he read a quote, is in a letter to Vaikuntanath. God brother passed away a few years ago. But Prabhupada, he was in India in the early days, and very, very difficult. And he wrote to Prabhupada about different things and about difficulties they're going through. And Prabhupada made this statement, I'll paraphrase it, that Krishna is sending you all these different types of distress. And that suffering you're going through to become Krishna conscious, you are burning up the past karma of billions of lifetimes. And Prabhupada said, simply for a little suffering in this lifetime, you're burning up the karma of billions of lifetimes. That seems completely out of proportion, but that's what's actually going on. Krishna's giving you that distress difficulties to purify you, and it's also burning up this, from billions of lifetimes. It's amazing. So, do I have to stop at 8:30? Because sometimes I just go off on tangents. Okay. And that tolerance, the other thing, is about being compassionate. That's the point brought up by the acharyas. This being more tolerant than a tree is because as devotees we preach. And you have to be very, very, very compassionate to others. Very, very kind to them. And it says here that you know that you are as tolerant as a tree when you are overwhelmed. Overwhelmed with thoughts of others' welfare and for every living entity. Mukunda, when was the last time you felt overwhelmed with compassion for others? Right? That's a tall order. But that's the heart of a great soul. They're actually overwhelmed. In many pastimes come out, Srila Prabhupada was with the devotees. At different times, they would see Prabhupada actually crying tears of compassion, just seeing the suffering of others. And that was Prabhupada's motivation to come and preach all over the world. And I was reading recently, I forget if the devotee was in the UK or Australia, but a new devotee, and he was thinking, I would like to find out where Srila Prabhupada is planning on going in his next life. He wanted to find out. So Nitai was Prabhupada's servant at the time, and he asked Nitai to ask Prabhupada, where's he going to go in his next life? Because he said, I'd like to go with Prabhupada wherever he's going. And later that day, Nitai came back with the answer. He asked Prabhupada, and he came back, and Prabhupada said, in my next life, I'm going to preach in the hellish planets. 60s and 70s is a good introduction to the hellish planets. But that was in all sincerity. Prabhupada said, in my next life, I will preach in that place. Overwhelmed with compassion for the fallen souls in the age of Kali. So that's a characteristic of one who's more tolerant than a tree. Again, it's not a becoming like a stone or something like that. It's just great compassion and understanding that the material world has so many obstacles, but we have to be very, very, very tolerant of all of those things and continue on with our preaching. So the next one is amanina. Amanina, that's the third quality, and that's freedom from false pride. And I guess the only person who can really speak on that is someone who's free from false pride. But it says that it means a spotless heart. And you're free from a false ego, false prestige, any type of enmity towards anyone else. And because what happens is that we become very proud in the mature world of anything. False ego, that's our, in psychology they talk about the elephant in the room, right? You've heard that expression, the elephant in the room. It's there, no one wants to talk about it. All right, sometimes you go to a counselor and there's a big problem, like maybe marriage counseling, the husband and wife are there and they're not talking about the real problem. It's the elephant, the big one, where there's a problem with the family. And no one, they call it the elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it. So the big elephant in the room for the conditioned soul is ahankara, false ego. It's from the moment we come into the material world, in fact, that's the first element, ahankara. And the soul becomes conditioned, you could say, by that false ego that I am a product of this material world. We're not. That's why it's called false ego. But that sense of identity. You can understand it even this lifetime. This lifetime, we have a sense of identity. And even in this lifetime, the sense of identity changes. Mukunda, how old are you? 9. So he has the false identity of a 9-year-old, right? It's interesting, a few years ago when you were in San Diego, you had the false identity of a 5-year-old, right? And one day you'll have the false identity of a 90-year-old man. What will you look like when you're 90? Yeah, quite different, right? So even in this lifetime, Krishna says that, right? That we pass through this life, that we go through different bodies in this lifetime, and they're all senses of identity. I'm this, I'm that, or I'm doing quite well. And then all of a sudden, were you telling me? Someone was just telling me, a friend of theirs here just got a notice. They were replaced by AI. Were you telling me that? Yeah. Just got the notice. So everything's going fine, and all of a sudden, now my identity is someone who's unemployed. So it just goes up, but we have that sense of identity. I'm someone in this material world. But it goes from lifetime to lifetime, throughout the lifetime, that false ego. And as long as we have that false ego, we become conditioned, and one of the biggest things we become conditioned by is pride. Pride is... there are different words in Sanskrit. The one I like to bring up, it's used in the Bhagavad Gita. It says there is a staircase of knowledge. And the very first step, the word used is adamba, which means prideless. So pride is damba. The way you remember it is that if you're proud, you're dumb. Okay, so adamba means prideless. And it's the very first step, because unless you're humble or prideless, you really can't learn anything. It's the very first step. So how do we get proud? What brings about pride? Queen Kunti explains there's 4 things which make us very, very proud. And it's interesting because these 4 things are signs that we were very good or pious in our previous life, but somehow or other, if we're not careful, these 4 things can ruin our life. Spiritual life, material life. So what are those things? Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shribir, she says. Janma, a nice birth. I come from a very nice family. Aishwarya, you have some money, right? And you have some money, you think, oh, I'm very, very special. I have so much money. So with that money comes so much power. And Aishwarya Shruta, learning. I have a degree. I have many degrees. I'm much more intelligent than you, or I'm very intelligent. I'm very smart. I can talk better and figure out things and whatever. And then Shribir means bodily beauty. One's very, very handsome. One's very, very beautiful. And I heard an interesting story about someone's very, very beautiful. You want to hear it? I mean, it's a strange story for sitting here in the temple room, but it's an interesting story. But I'll tell it very quickly. I thought it was very interesting. And they say it could be true, pretty much true. There was a prostitute in Greek society, and she was very, very famous, and had connections with many of the people higher up in government and so on. I forget her name. She has 2 different names. And she was like a demigoddess. I mean, wasn't even human. She was so beautiful. So people were just falling all over, and she was very, very wealthy because of obvious reasons. But something happened, and she was accused of some kind of blasphemy or something like that, and brought to court. And it didn't look good because none of her suitors were going to stand up and defend her, and they were all highly positioned and so on. So there she is, and you can, the judges are looking at her like, this is it. I don't know if it was a death penalty or whatever. But there was one person who was one of her suitors, one high up in the government and so on. He decided to come to her defense. You know what he did? Took off her clothes right there in front of all the judges and said, she is so beautiful. How could you condemn a person like this to death? And said, well, in today's world, maybe they would, but in Greek society, they were so enamored by the form, the naked form of men and women, that they all said, you're right. She is so beautiful, we can't condemn her. And they let her go. So beautiful, right? So intoxicated by beauty. She was, they were. Just that was her defense. Interesting story. Sidelight. Okay. But the point is, we get bewildered by these things, and we have to be very, very careful. Because what happens is with these 4 things, they lead to pride. which leads to offending and hurting others. That's the problem. If you look at all the problems in the world, it's due to false pride, isn't it? And being very disrespectful to others and being enamored, very, very proud. Any problem in our personal life, or you look in the news, on the internet or whatever, what's going on internationally, it's all due to pride. If these people were a little more humble or a lot more humble, none of these problems would be there. So you have to watch out for these things. There's amanina, the false ego, and it can even be present in our spiritual life. One can become proud of being a spiritual person, a spiritual leader. So it has to be very, very, it's just a false ego, and pride is insidious. And that's very dangerous. It could be argued the most dangerous position in society for someone to be infected by pride is in religious circles or spiritual circles, because people depend upon a spiritual person wholeheartedly for the most important things in life, advice and so on, and just their spiritual advancement. And if one becomes proud of that, then it's a great disservice to humanity. So we should not be proud of anything. And of course, knowing where it all comes from, it's Krishna's gift. And there's that story that one devotee, thinking himself very, very humble and fallen, stood up after a lecture and said, "Srila Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen devotee." And Prabhupada said, "Sit down, you're not the most anything." So even, you be humble. Sometimes you be, "Oh, I'm the most fallen. I'm the most." No, just sit down. You're not the most anything. And as far as pride, there's that story in the Mahabharata where I imagine it was Dronacharya. Yes, Yudhisthira Maharaj, to show the difference between Yudhisthira and Dronacharya. Yes, Yudhisthira Maharaj, can you go through the kingdom and find someone who's lower than you? And Duryodhana, I want you to go out into the kingdom and see if you can find anyone who's greater than you. So they went out. And when they came back, Maharaj Yudhisthira said, "I could not find anyone lower than me." And Duryodhana said, "I couldn't find anyone greater than me." See the difference? Like that. So the difference. So this is the Vaishnava. And then manada manadena, the last quality, that's your offering respects to others. And sometimes we're forced to offer respect to others. When they say that expression, kowtow, right? Maybe you're forced to offer respect to your parents, right? Or the government, your employer, your wife, right? You don't want to, but you're forced, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen, right? But that's not what this is referring to. The understanding that we're offering respects to every single living entity because they're all part and parcel of Krishna. They're worthy of so much respect. More than a temporary designation, maybe they're more important than us, or our livelihoods dependent on them, or this. No. Because that all comes and goes, and it's not very deep, and it's all calculated, right? So you were talking about, the other night, we're driving back, we're saying there's that, as far as work, there's a saying that the employers pay their employees just enough so they don't quit. And the employees work just enough so they don't get fired. So that's not a very congenial relationship. That's not a very amiable, nice relationship that you're calculating. So in the material world, this offering respect to others, all calculated. There's diplomacy, politics, and all that. So we're not referring to that at all. It's not a calculated emotion. It's that we see everyone as eternal servants of the Lord, and therefore we're non-envious. I guess a good example would be is if you love a parent, you actually have natural affection for the children. It's automatic. Right? So if you love Krishna to the extent we love Krishna, we'll love every single living entity, because every single living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. And that's where this comes from. This is what we're referring to, offering all respects to others. And the analysis that there is a line, called a dividing line between material life and spiritual life. We may think there's so many different differences between the two, but there's this one line which goes right down the middle. If you're on this side, you're in spiritual consciousness. If you're on this side, you're in material consciousness. Spiritual. What is that dividing line? It's described that spiritual life, let's start with material life. Material life, it teaches us to be the master. Spiritual life teaches us to be the servant. So what is our mentality in any situation? Are we thinking we're the, as Krishna says, Ishwaraham Ham Bhogi, I'm the controller, I'm perfect, powerful, and happy, I'm the master? Or we're thinking Das Das Anudas, I'm the servant. That's the dividing line. That's the consciousness. So Vedic culture, spiritual cultures, they always teach you become the servant. And material life says, no, no, no. You should be number one. Like that, how to climb the ladder, how to be number one, how to be in control, the master, get it all together. Puja offering. She was saying that she was listening to a lecture, soul in this material world, and Krishna is saving me. To that level, that realization, the chanting is actually very, very blissful. And Krishna consciousness is very, very blissful. One just throws in the towel, material life. Just throws it, Krishna, help me. I am helpless. And we actually are. It's not that this person's helpless and this person isn't. We're all helpless, being carried away by the waves of this material energy, day and night, things. Oh, Krishna, help me. So in that helpless condition, all this realization comes, and the name becomes manifest, the pure chanting and so on. It's a wonderful realization. So this Manida Manidena. And, even in spiritual circles, it says, it was brought up by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta and others, that one's a spiritual master, but one thinks, I'm a master of the Vaishnavas, that's a problem. But one, right? If that's our mood, right? If that's our mood, whew, we just examine. Oh, how am I doing on Trinadapi, Sunichina, Tororiva, Sushna, Manina, Manadena? How am I doing on those things? To the extent those things are manifest, Kirtaniya Sadahari. As the Prabhupada said, here's the formula. Applying it is not so easy, but we'll never get to the point of Kirtaniya Sadahari, chanting all the time with great pleasure until our heart is that pure. That's what it is. These four qualities have to become manifest in our life. Kirtaniya Sadahari. And it is said that to the extent these four qualities are developed, we rise above Namaparad and Nambasa. The chanting is in three different stages. Namaparad being the lowest, so many offenses. Nambasa, clearing, and then the pure name, Shuddhanam. It's all dependent on the level we've able to manifest these four qualities in our life. And so that's why, like here in the morning, we chant the Shikshastakam every day and just to meditate on these four things. Like that. Trinadapi Sunichena Tororiva Suhishna Manidamana Kirtaniya Sadahari. Kirtaniya Sadahari. So if we don't have those qualities, how do we get them? Kirtaniya Sadahari. We just keep chanting. The chanting is both the means and the ends. Keep chanting them. But to the extent we have these four qualities, our life will become very, very successful and very, very happy. And to the extent we don't have them, we suffer. I mean, it's success in a nutshell, I guess, if you want to call it that. Just four things. Just like if you read Vaisheshika's book, the 4 questions. Just 4 questions. Depending on how you answer these 4 questions, will decide how successful you are in life. That's what I tell people when I distribute it. There's 4 questions here. You read the book. Depending on how you answer these 4 questions will determine how successful you are in life. So in the same way, how successful are we going to be in our endeavors in Krishna consciousness, even life in general? Believe it or not, it's these 4 things. So many people out there have so many ideas about, there's so many self-help gurus and this and that and books, on the shelf every year, and how to be successful, this and that, this, that. What is it? He's passed away, but Stephen Covey, remember him? The Covey movement? That's what successful material life means. It doesn't encumber your spiritual life. It doesn't mean, if you are more humble than a blade of grass, more tall than a tree, you'll be worth millions of dollars. It doesn't mean that. Success in material life means your material life, whatever it is, doesn't encumber your Krishna consciousness, whatever it might be. So these are just a few thoughts on these 4 beautiful points Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke on. Are there any questions or comments? Or did I exhaust the topic? Or questions on anything? Or actually it's time for the hook to grab me and pull me out of here because it's almost 9:15. What's the schedule? What are we supposed to do?
I just wanted to say that anytime you attend an interview, there are certain places I feel difficult to answer. Those are like, what are your strengths? What are you good at? Growing up, parents teach you to be humble.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come into this flip side, you have to promote yourself to get the job.
Right.
And then I feel like that's where the false ego starts to build up. Not that we didn't had earlier, but this is where I can see it very clearly, where I'm so good at so-and-so, my strengths are so-and-so, and you start like, believing in that. And now when I pass through that phase of it and going back to the roots, like how important it is to be humble. Thank you. It was just reflecting when you were talking about how we have to be humble.
No, it's a very good point, because as devotees, sometimes there's a little bit of, I don't know if the word is schizophrenia. We live in 2 different worlds, because actually every soul, there's a spiritual side of life and a material side of life. That's just the reality we live in. Those are the 2 dimensions for everyone, because life is a combination of matter and spirit. So in situations like that, 2 things is, when you are filling that out, you're not talking about yourself. You're talking about your material situation, who you are, and you've done all those things. Maybe you are extremely gifted in many different ways. Put it there. That's the body you're in this lifetime. But it's not really who I am. It's like describing a car you have. I've got the latest so-and-so. So it's not me. I'm just telling you how beautiful, how nice this car, all the features and this. Tell me about all the features on your car. Tell me about your house. Well, it's so many square feet. It got this beautiful this. You ought to see the backyard. And it's not you. But then the problem, like you said, is sometimes we start if we identify with it, and then it sucks us into the whole thing, and we have to be very careful. But good or bad, the false ego brings us in. It's something that's really difficult, gets so close to us, and it has such a grasp on us. It's the very foundation of our material existence, is ahankara. And how to break free, really, it's chanting the holy names and service to the Vaishnavas and the Guru. That's the only thing that's going to break us out of the false ego. It's the only thing. Nothing else will do it. So
Prabhu, if I may ask, at 16-year-old, what is that you got attracted towards Prabhupada?
Oh, the same thing as everyone else. Srila Prabhupada's books.
Books.
Like that. But also, you can call it, at least materially speaking, a product of the 60s and 70s. Things were really crazy back then. I have 2 daughters, and when they were 16, they want to go enjoy a religious movement, I wouldn't have let them. But, things were so crazy. I had one brother, he became a follower of Reverend Moon. I had one sister, my sister became a Muslim. All kinds of crazy things, and I became a Hare Krishna. My poor parents, my poor parents. But it's interesting that my mother told me a few years ago, she was visiting, she said, you're the only normal child I have. So there it is, it all worked out. But part of it is that 70s was such an amazing time, and people could do things like that and just, okay. And, Prabhupada's books, just open it up, and that was it, like coming home. And fortunately, whatever my parents allowed me to do that, they told me they were thinking, I'll just be there for a few months. 50 years later, I'm still here, I haven't gone home yet. But so I guess I owe a debt to them that they didn't make a big to-do about it like some families did. And on one hand, you can't blame them because they don't know what's going on. There's no point of reference that someone goes off and becomes not just joins a monastic order, but from India and this and that. But even in the West, I have devotee friends that the wife, she grew up in Italy, she's Italian. And she said, even to this day, in the villages and towns and so on, if someone's son wants to become a Catholic priest, the whole village shows up and celebrates. It's a very wonderful, honored thing that one of your children want to join, I guess a nun or a priest. It's something very honorable. And the whole town shows up to celebrate the fact that they're going off to be a priest or a nun. That's not here in America. It's like, what happened? Too bad. Something like that. Let alone, especially back then, something from India or this and that was all very, very exotic and strange, and no one knew what was going on and so on. But anyways, that's Krishna's mercy, Prabhupada's mercy. Like that. So we can end here? All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. No. Srila Prabhupada. Now you're retracting your sponsorship.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for sharing this. So I hope you can share again whenever you visit next time. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for visiting and hearing.
You actually owe this to Gorkesha Prabhu, because when I call him, I'm doing a wedding in a few days for Ajit Krishna Das and so on. And he said, you have to, please come and stay at our house. And then he calls me back and says, you're speaking at the temple. You're leading Mangalarti. He's like, I had my whole schedule out. You're doing it. So you thank him, or don't thank him, whichever way you want like to go. But it's his kindness that he arranged all this. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Too long?
No, it's good. Perfect. Very nice. Thank you.
So they count this is every day?
No, this is Janmashtami.
Oh, very nice temple. That's a one-day's collection.
We had 30,000
Yes, I heard.
being a Saturday.
No, is that what they were doing last night at the Balaji temple? That was the last thing they were counting also?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. Chicken garlic,
Nice fragrance, Prabhuji.
yes, terrible. Remind me for a second of those old projectors.
Yeah.
I even forgot what they call them. It's so many decades ago. The classroom.
We'll have to stop the live stream. It's still going on the YouTube live. I have to stop it.
I'll be careful what I say. Nothing offensive.